Rome, 1471. The heart of Christendom, a city of art, power, and devotion, but also a city of secrets. In the gilded halls of the Vatican, one man rose to the papal throne with brilliance and ambition, yet lived a life of indulgence and scandal that would echo through history. Pope Sixtus IV, born Francesco della Rovere, became infamous not only for his political cunning, but for the intimate relationships he maintained behind closed doors. Among these relationships, none was more scandalous than the one he shared with his nephew, Pietro Riario. It was a union that defied morality, blurred the lines of family, and challenged the very institution of the church. Pietro's wealth, power, and beauty were unmatched, and Sixtus lavished him with privileges that fueled whispers across Rome. But these indulgences were more than personal. They had consequences that reached deep into the Vatican treasury, into the streets of Rome, and into the lives of countless faithful. By the end of this story, the full extent of this scandal, its consequences, and the darker legacy of Sixtus IV will be revealed. Stay with it to uncover a tale of desire, corruption, and power unlike any other in papal history. Francesco della Rovere was born in 1414 in the small Ligurian town of Celle. From modest beginnings, he pursued a life in the church with relentless ambition. Known for his sharp intellect and political acumen, he steadily climbed the ranks of the ecclesiastical hierarchy. In 1471, at the age of 57, he was elected pope, taking the name Sixtus IV. The Vatican of the late 15th century was a city of extremes. Renaissance art and architecture flourished, yet political intrigue and corruption were rampant. Families competed for influence, cardinals jostled for position, and the papacy itself was both a spiritual authority and a political powerhouse. In this environment, nepotism was not merely tolerated, it was expected, and Sixtus IV would redefine it. Unlike his predecessors, who sometimes quietly favored relatives, Sixtus elevated family and lovers with an almost unprecedented zeal. This was a pope whose personal desires would intertwine with the governance of the church, a man whose indulgence in pleasure and power would become legendary. Pietro Riario, the son of Sixtus IV's sister, entered this world of power and privilege as a figure of fascination and intrigue. Some rumors even suggested that Pietro might have been the Pope's own son, though this remains unconfirmed. What is certain is that Pietro's charm, beauty, and ambition drew the Pope's intense favor. Sixtus lavished Pietro with wealth, land, and influence. He rose quickly in Roman society, granted privileges few others could imagine, and became a figure of envy among the city's elite. Villas adorned with fine art, sumptuous parties, and a life of luxury were made possible by the papal treasury. Pietro's rise was both a testament to the Pope's nepotism and a source of scandal in itself. But the relationship went far beyond the typical uncle-nephew dynamic. Sixtus and Pietro were lovers, their closeness a source of gossip and moral outrage in Rome. Their bond was personal, intimate, and public enough to inspire whispers that would survive for centuries. The Pope's indulgence of his nephew created a lavish court of excess and scandal, but it also sowed seeds of tension and financial instability that would challenge the Vatican itself. Sixtus IV was bisexual, a fact that historians note alongside his 6 illegitimate children. He surrounded himself with handsome men, many of whom were appointed cardinals as rewards for personal favor. 23 cardinals, many strikingly young and attractive, were elevated during his papacy, leading observers to question whether merit or intimacy dictated these appointments. The Pope's lifestyle was unapologetically indulgent. One-night stands, lovers elevated to powerful positions, and the luxurious upbringing of Pietro Riario all exemplify a life where desire and power intertwined. While priests and cardinals were punished for having mistresses, Sixtus himself maintained his private life with impunity. His ability to navigate this hypocrisy, simultaneously enforcing church rules while indulging his desires, underscores the complexity of his character and the audacity of his indulgences. Despite the scandal, his influence remained unquestioned. He held the loyalty of many, controlled vast wealth, and maneuvered through political landscapes with deft skill. But the financial and social consequences of his indulgence were mounting, and Rome would soon feel the strain. If this story of hidden power, forbidden love, and Vatican scandal captivates you, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. More stories of corruption, scandal, and hidden history await, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Pietro Riario's lavish lifestyle, funded by the papal treasury, placed enormous strain on church finances. When Pietro died in 1474, the Vatican was left with enormous debts. Sixtus IV attempted to remedy the situation through heavy taxation, including levies on prostitution and the selling of church offices to the highest bidder. Despite these measures, his personal indulgences continued. The Pope persisted in surrounding himself with lovers and maintaining his lavish lifestyle. The Vatican was caught between fiscal necessity and the Pope's private desires, a tension that reflected the broader contradictions of Sixtus' papacy: public austerity, private excess, and the blending of power and pleasure in ways that threatened the stability of the Church. The combination of nepotism, indulgence, and financial strain exposed Rome to criticism, but the Pope's authority was such that few dared to challenge him openly. His lifestyle, scandalous as it was, became a defining feature of his reign. Yet Sixtus IV's personal scandals would be eclipsed by his political and religious actions. Among the most consequential was his authorization of the Spanish Inquisition. Through papal bulls, he sanctioned persecution and punishment in the name of faith, establishing systems that would terrorize populations and enforce religious orthodoxy with brutal efficiency. The contrast between his scandalous personal life and his absolute authority in matters of faith illustrates a profound paradox. Sixtus IV indulged freely in personal desires while exercising immense control over political and religious life. His actions would have lasting consequences, with the Spanish Inquisition becoming one of the darkest chapters in church history. Even centuries later, historians continue to grapple with the tension between the human flaws of Sixtus IV and the immense institutional power he wielded. The Pope's life raises questions about the responsibilities of those in positions of authority and the ways personal indulgences can intersect with public decisions to shape history. Sixtus IV's papacy exemplifies the interplay between power, human desire, and institutional authority. His relationship with Pietro Riario shows how favoritism and nepotism could be used for personal gain, while the financial and moral consequences reveal the dangers of unchecked indulgence. The Pope's story is not just a tale of scandal. It is a lesson in the fragility of institutions when human desires override responsibility. The Vatican, often perceived as a bastion of spiritual guidance, was also a place where ambition, lust, and power could dictate decisions with far-reaching consequences. His life invites reflection on the nature of leadership, morality, and human behavior. A man capable of both extraordinary generosity and scandalous indulgence, Sixtus IV leaves behind a legacy as complicated as the city he ruled, a legacy that continues to fascinate historians and the public alike. If this story of forbidden love, ambition, and scandal has captured your attention, subscribe for more hidden histories of power, corruption, and intrigue. Hit the bell to make sure you don't miss the next story of secrets that shape the world. Pope Sixtus IV's life raises an enduring question. How should history judge those whose personal desires collide with the fate of millions? He was a man of passion, a master of politics, and a figure whose personal scandals were intertwined with profound historical consequences. The Vatican remembers the debts, the indulgences, and the Inquisition, but behind it all was a human heart navigating power, desire, and the heavy burden of authority. History, in the end, remembers both the scandal and the legacy, and perhaps in understanding figures like Sixtus IV, we glimpse the complex humanity behind the crowns, mitres, and thrones of the past.